All right, let's get some perspective now on where we stand in the crisis. David Marples, he's a professor of Russian and East European history at the University of Alberta in Edmonton, Canada. Good to have you on the show, David. Do you think that Russia's goals continue to be elusive as ever, almost 3 weeks into this conflict?
I do. I mean, I think the campaign has gone very badly for Russia, whichever way you look at it. And certainly from three sides, the progress has been very slow. The only possible counter to that is that they managed to occupy the city of Kherson. But even in Kherson, there was a huge demonstration against the Russian occupation over the weekend. The citizens are quite free, it seems, to gather in the streets. And the Russians are making themselves unpopular by the bombing of civilian houses, centers, hospitals, kindergartens. These are not strategic targets, but these are being hit by the Russians. And the Russians seem more and more desperate and sort of in response to the failure to capture key points, they seem to be hitting the civilians first and foremost. So this is turning into a really nasty, messy war, and not one that is going to be won very easily if these tactics continue.
I mean, talking about this rising unpopularity, it seems a bit ironic because from the very beginning, it was said that Russia sort of wanted Ukraine inside of its sphere of influence. But the fact of the matter is there is considerable civilian casualties. Isn't it alienating the very population that it claimed to be coming to protect?
Yes, and in fact, Russia right now is in the areas which have been most pro-Russian in the past, in the Donbass, in the south, and these are the areas now which are turning against them. The rest of Ukraine is pretty solidly against Putin from the outset and have been for a long time. So the further west you go in Ukraine, the more hostile the population is likely to be. So I think it is going badly, and I think even if, let's say, the city was occupied, city of Kiev was occupied, city of Kharkiv was occupied, so what, really? This is not going to prove anything. It's going to be a very uncomfortable occupation that is undermined by citizens' actions, by guerrilla tactics, for as long as it takes, really. I mean, I cannot see any situation in which the population is satisfied with Russian rule after the way it's begun.
It's been said that after Russia is sort of after restoring its glory days of the Soviet era. I mean, but that was a Russia or perhaps a Soviet Union that operated more pragmatically, sort of building up its power by different means. I mean, how does a demolished country, a demolished Ukraine on its doorstep actually help Russia?
I can't see how it really helps at all. And, you know, even if there was to be some kind of benign rule from Russia, it would take an enormous rebuilding program even now. I mean, it's fairly obvious most of the city centers are going to have to be rebuilt. And I think that is going to take a long time. And then what kind of government are you going to install? How are you going to appoint this government? Are you going to have a parliamentary election? Would it be a free election, or would it be simply like a military rule with Russia calling the shots? And that's the way it seems to be at the moment. So this is looking more and more unpleasant, and it's looking like a longer-term operation. And the West is imposing, of course, the hardest sanctions it can do without actually taking part in the conflict. It's not good for Putin, and I heard him say earlier on your program that he was not going to send in the conscripts, but like these look like conscripts to me. And in many of the cases, the young army guys who surrender, first of all, had no idea where they were going. Many of them had no food. They'd run out of food. And they were very quickly taking advantage of the situation of getting food and accommodation from the locals. So this is really looking pretty pathetic from Russia's point of view, I would say.
Okay. David Marples, thank you very much for joining us here on TRT World. I do appreciate the analysis. Thanks.